6:30. Harry, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Harry. First item is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any issues with the minutes? And they're approved as written. Can Harry sign for Matt?
Yes, that's fine.
Sign for Matt there.
Okay.
Visitors' comments. If there's anybody here that would like to talk about anything that's not on the agenda, now would be the time. We can't act on it, but you can talk. In general, anybody that gets up to talk, please state your name and address for the record. Item A, discuss food truck court guidelines and zoning restrictions and call for a public hearing.
Good evening, everyone. So like I said, my name is Megan Borth. I'm the Assistant City Manager. So I've sort of been guiding and facilitating this conversation with council, and so I thought it'd be best if I came and sort of explained to you what guidelines council was thinking, and staff endorses these as well. So if you turn to the packet that I placed in front of you, I'm just going to run through these relatively quickly. I will hesitate when we get to the zoning portion, because that more so pertains to this commission. But if you want me to stop, if you have any questions, you want me to elaborate further, I'm happy to do so. These are set up in a way that all of these items will be entered into the ordinance when it is written. So they sort of follow that flow. So items to consider requiring a concept plan. I believe David Walton talked to you about this last time. It's just a diagrammed plan that explains how everything is going to be laid out on the site. It will also include any parking areas, anything like that that we require in regular ordinances as well outside of this ordinance. It will be approved by David Walton's office. We will do a temporary site permit, and this is going to be for what we're going to call operational sites, and that's where they may prepare food off-site or set up as a temporary food truck, anything like that, anywhere that they might prepare or sell food or dispose of waste that is not on the food truck court site will get a permit. For moving requirements, we are not going to require them to move, although they do have to stay mobile, and they will have to come here to City Hall once annually for their inspection. This will be how staff ensures that they are remaining mobile at least once a year. But they will have to keep tires on, hitches on, everything like that. Additional inspections, we are going to automatically do 2 inspections for those that are considered more like a permanent food truck, not a temporary for an event. That's because we do 2 annual inspections for brick and mortar restaurants. So we're just going to treat them the exact same way we're treating the brick and mortars. So zones and areas allowed. Council has asked that they not be within 60 feet of any residential properties. We don't foresee this being an issue. It's just to make a little bit more of a barrier, since food courts will most likely have some sort of noise going on or more lights, things like that. The zones, this is something that we will need to talk about. Previously, David Walton, I believe, talked to you about B1 and B2. Staff has also brought up, I believe Sal brought up C1. So we're curious, this was not something that council specifically spoke on. They did like the idea of B1 and B2, but they did not set that in stone. So I would like guidance from you if you're comfortable doing so on that. Would you like me to keep going, or you want to talk about that now?
Well, I don't know if you, do you not, I'd like to hear what Sal
Yeah.
has to say about the C1. Because
I didn't want to just shut down that possibility, which at this particular time probably escapes me, of ever happening, because C1 by nature, the use of it is so expensive, because, I mean, C1 property does carry a high ticket item.
Right.
So more than likely it'll never happen, but there may be one that escapes me at this particular time, where it's a C1 area and it is not used for some time. It remains a C1 area for whatever purpose, and and they want to use it in the meanwhile for that particular purpose, trying to get some revenue back in some form or fashion. It is not the case in this particular B2 over here, for example, this PUDB2 at the HEB. But in that particular case, if it was a C1, remaining is for empty for so vacant for so long, if there was a possibility of somebody wanting to get some return on that property and set up a truck area, food truck area, then that possibility could be there. More than likely, it'll never happen, but, you know, that was the main reason for it.
Okay, so it's kind of a future, potential
Correct.
future.
You never know when.
Never know.
Never know when. And there really shouldn't be any objection to having one, I don't believe, unless you believe that there is, that you have a very strong objection of having C1 open for that.
Do we have any C1s that are adjacent to residential?
No.
And this is just reference to within 60 feet of residential, so, so future.
We don't know what's gonna come down the road in the Alden area, for example.
Right.
And so that's the reason why, you know, just leaving one thing in there. It, you know, maybe not be, it may not be necessary at this time, and you may wanna consider that, reconsider that one in the future when something like that crops up, so.
'Cause there was a lot of talk about potential of this being a good fit over on Plantation Drive.
Yes,
And-
sir.
And I think, you know, there's certainly residential within 60 feet, is there not? Particularly on the,
Yes, and this one really, the way it's worded up in those conditions that you mentioned there, which is primarily, I could say on Plantation is right there by the dairy bar, for example.
yeah, right.
Where there are some of them already set up there.
Mhm.
That 60-foot margin to the residences is really gonna negate any of those businesses because it would put the food truck almost right at the roadway, necessary.
Right, right. So it would, I guess my point was that would be kind of a limiting factor for
Yes.
that particular
Yes.
area of town.
You're right, you know, when I saw it, the way they put it in there, I said, well, this is gonna stop that corner of Shady Oaks and Plantation.
Yeah.
So most cities, we did a lot of research into this specific item, and originally staff brought to council 100 feet because that is what most cities do. They also do it where it will be 100 feet from the nearest business unless they have written permission to operate within 100 feet of that business. So this is actually, council chose to go more lenient than what we were able to find. But I do believe they felt pretty strongly about the 60 feet. So not that we disagree, but I think that was something that they felt pretty strongly about. They told staff to figure out a good measurement. And so we have had 3 different sites interested in doing a food court, and none of them would be restricted by that at this current point. Not saying it would not restrict future properties, but currently they could all operate within these current guidelines. Is there any other feedback on the zone?
I'm trying to see if images, if it's 60 feet away, is that restricting what can be in that 60 feet? I mean, these are boundary lines or play.
Depending on the B1, B2 involved. In most cases, it's gonna be B1 that neighbors residential areas. And typically, those lots, those businesses are small in either depth or in width. So establishing that 60-foot offset from the residential areas may, like I said, make that piece of land just not viable for that.
You'd almost have to have like 2 B1s, if you have plantation and 2 B1s or whichever, before you get to a residential. And the truck, this would have to be in the one farthest away. trying to visualize that.
How are we gonna measure the 60 feet? Is it to the first, closest part of the truck, or from the cars that are
No,
parked?
it's the property line, would it have to
Well,
be?
see, that's the whole thing, property lines, they're taking this, or somebody has taken what we have in the, in the books already concerning, colors. At one time was the color of a business that couldn't be, it couldn't be a color that was unacceptable if it were 60 foot from the nearest resident, from the nearest lot, residential lot there. And most of the time, what they were taking consideration was a 60-foot right-of-way that would be more than likely involved. So therefore, the 60-foot would make sense, because the right-of-way itself would be the 60-foot that, in margin there. In cases where it backs immediately to that one, you know, I don't know where you say 60 foot from where to where.
Well, also this grease trap is creating, seem like an alley to access that.
The grease trap, that you haven't gotten to that point yet.
No, but it seemed like in the configuration, you're gonna have to have access that. It won't be on the good side. And no, we don't normally have alleys. Downtown we do, but, so that's,
And they're not even 60
is
foot.
trying to lay all these things out with 60 feet is another
It's
consideration.
gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to find the proper place that meets those conditions. Yes. For certain properties that back into those type of deals.
All right, Megan, lead us on down the path.
Okay. So, number of trucks allowed, there will be no limit on the number of trucks allowed per site. However, it still must meet all other standards and requirements. Required to move, I kind of said this above, but the only big stipulation here is that they do have to report to their designated commissary at least once per day. And this is essentially as needed for food, supplies, cleaning, and servicing. Most of these sites are going to want to have a commissary on site. That is traditional of a food court. So it may mean that they don't have to leave if they are able to. A lot of food trucks are outfitted with portable ways of getting rid of any waste or gray matter, anything like that. And so they may not have to move the actual truck, but they could do that on site. But on top of that, we will require a food truck log. Each truck is going to have to operate one that shows when they visited that commissary to do the actions mentioned above. They will have to keep this on hand so that our health inspector can request it as needed. We won't require photos or anything like that, but they can keep receipts in place of the log if they struggle to uphold the log. Yes, sir.
I'm back at the required to move.
Yes, sir.
This sort of negates having grassy areas that you're gonna track across or such, so bring in trucks to move them.
So we will require, with the concept plan, they have to have maneuvering areas and they have to have actual cord placement areas for the trucks. So they shouldn't be driving over any grass areas.
Forward placement.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So they should, or some sort of surface. Yeah, some sort of improved surface.
Well, I was picturing the one they were showing us that had the 4. And if you've got concrete pathways to each one of them, that's some strange geometry going on there.
Yeah, they'll have to figure that out. That'll be on the onus of the property owner.
Okay, my grassy
okay?
area, I'm not visualizing now, so very good.
All right. Hours of operation. Council's thought was that it could be at some point between 5 a.m. to 12 a.m., so to midnight. That's when they can operate. It's similar to what our brick and mortar stores operate today. We sort of did a brief poll of when they're all open, and we feel like everyone can operate between those hours. But noise will not be permitted from 11 p.m. to 9 a.m. All the ones that have approached us have asked to do some sort of amplified noise, music, or have an outdoor concert area. So this would really pertain to them.
Okay. wait a
Yes, sir.
minute. No amplified permitted between 11 p.m. to
Yes,
9
to 9
a.m.
While everyone's
Okay,
sleeping.
the other side of the okay, all right, I see, excuse me, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Signage, we're just referencing back to the side ordinance. Because it is private property, they can do whatever they want on their food truck. And then other signs that are on the property, we don't necessarily regulate those, but anything else that falls under the sign ordinance, we will regulate as normal. For parking, our recommendation is 1 off-street vehicle parking space per table, also per food truck. Most should not have any issue with this. All the food trucks we currently have, though they're not courts, they all have at least 1 parking space. For restrooms, we will require permanent restrooms. These will be accessible for both staff, employees of the food trucks, and the public. We are not recommending the allowance of portable or temporary restrooms. This is because the food court is theoretically permanent, so the restroom should be as well.
Okay, I'm still catching up one behind.
Yes, sir.
The parking.
Yes,
I
sir.
was visualizing people driving up to get for lunches and such.
Yes, yes, sir.
And this is based only on the tables that are there, that are eating in, if you will.
Craig, I think that was an oversight. It is per food truck as well, so per table / food truck. So I don't think it's written that way right now, but if there's 1 food truck, there has to be 1 parking space. If there's 2 food trucks, there has to be 2 parking spaces.
Okay, I'm visualizing too, if you have this and it's a popular thing, you're gonna have a half a dozen people at each food truck.
Correct.
Where are those half dozen people gonna park?
Well, this was just a minimum idea. If you want us to look at more, we can. But theoretically, these are supposed to be, people are moving through it quickly. And we were sort of looking at what we do with brick and mortar stores as well and what we make their parking requirements. So we were trying to be reasonable when we're looking at food truck courts. But if you think we should look at increasing that, I can definitely take it back to council.
I don't know, like I said, where are these half a dozen times 4, 24 people, plus the employees parking?
Oh, this will not count for employee parking. This is only for public parking. So for,
Okay, so it's
Customers.
worse. It's worse rather than better. So it's
well, then they'll have to
24
have additional parking for employees. That will be on the onus of the property owner. So all the ones that we've already planned, they plan on having a separate area for parking for staff, for employees.
The parking ordinances don't make a distinction like that.
Right.
So this is,
That confuses me. I've been following along.
Okay,
yeah,
Because when we do the brick and mortar, we do the type of restaurant, the type of traffic, and the parking, as he's saying, covers people who work there and customers.
right.
And if you're saying, oh, well, we've already talked to them, that there's gonna be parking elsewhere, well, good, but I don't see that on here.
And if you want something in the ordinance, I'm happy to add that.
I think there needs to be a minimum parking spot per food truck for employees.
Okay,
I'm not gonna say it needs to be 2 per food truck, but I think at very minimum, it needs to be 1 per food truck, just because they're gonna be driving to work. We don't have rapid transit down here. So, they're probably gonna wind up having more than that, but I think if it's a requirement, there needs to be 1 parking spot.
do you think just 1 for employees and
Well, I'd
1 for?
love to, but as I look at all of this, there's gonna be like maybe 1 piece of property in the city of Lake Jackson that could actually be used as a food court, the way we are hog tying it. And so, have you run any of these by the 3 groups that have expressed an interest, or the groups have?
Yes.
Have they looked at these and they're okay with all of this?
Yes.
They've
been coming to council meetings. Well, 2 of them have and 1's been watching, so.
Man, I wanna make this work. I'm just
Yes,
trying to
sir.
figure out how to make it work. I mean, you gotta have a parking spot, I think, per food truck.
So you're thinking 1 for staff. So we'll require 2 essentially right now per truck.
that's still not the customers.
Well, I was thinking you would just require 2 in general per truck, unless you want me to look at more.
Well, I just went to somewhere in Houston that had a food court, so let me think. They had I mean, they talk about doing music, that's not people coming and going. I'm not envisioning the lunchtime crowd, I'm envisioning the after-work people
Or the
on a
weekends.
beautiful day
Yeah.
like today, who wanna go out and support a food truck and have food truck food. And you're gonna have a lot of parking, or a lot of people, you're gonna have people sitting out.
Right.
And that might be a nice thing to do, or like this last weekend, to have music out there. I mean, so, I don't know what the solution is, I'm trying to,
I think parking is a serious issue for customers and employees, and more thought has to be going into parking for everybody involved. Like he says, you're gonna have a crowd.
I mean, a lot of it depends where these people, where there's actually land that they would wind up doing it. There might be other public parking near someplace where you go, oh, okay, but we don't know that, we're trying to create something out of whole cloth.
You can envision live music, that's gonna attract people. The Worst House does that once a month.
Well,
With the
Phil
band.
Station does it every weekend,
Which place?
Phil Station,
Okay,
but
You're
they
wel-
have a lot of access to public parking.
that's right, the city, the downtown.
Okay, so we can revisit that. I'll make a note.
I mean, we're open to suggestions, I
Right.
just think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
If you envision downtown and then you all of a sudden try to take your eye to plantation, which Joe wanted to do, that's, so we've got all this parking, we've got all these improved to each. I wonder if we're gonna have a landscaping.
Okay, so we will revisit that. For restrooms?
Restrooms, okay.
Yes, was everyone comfortable with what we said about restrooms?
What does it say?
They're required to have permanent restrooms for use of employees and the public.
I like the idea of a permanent restroom. I like the idea of no portable or temporary restroom allowed. You have something kind of vague. The minimum number and type of restroom shall be determined based on the occupant load of the food truck court.
Correct.
So, are you asking us for guidance or counsel for,
This would, theoretically, this would remain vague. And it would be written into the ordinance to be vague as determined by the code enforcement office at the time of the concept plan.
fair enough?
I mean, theoretically, we can always look at changing that, but
I mean, that's fair enough.
yeah. Most will probably only be required to have two, one men, one women, or two unisex.
Which is similar to every brick and mortar
Correct.
restaurant has.
But if we're talking 20 acres somehow, I don't know where that could happen, Alden maybe, then they would probably be required to have more, so.
Okay.
I don't see anything on here, this page,
Yes, sir.
with regard to trash receptacles. Is that gonna be the responsibility of the individual food trucks or of the person who operates the whole property? How's that gonna work?
That's a good
Yeah, so,
consideration.
yeah, I think it is the next page, number 5. And this is something we would automatically require. So that, sorry, this next page is everything that's automatically required. And it says that they have to provide sufficient sized refuse and recyclable, containers. And then it also talks about their byproduct waste.
Okay.
And that's inherent just based on regular code.
And who would be responsible for emptying those
It would be on the onus of the property owner.
property owners?
Yes, sir.
That makes sense, yeah.
So, just notice that your parking, you've got two approaches. I had noticed that number 12 looks like it's strictly for, is it, maybe it's not the employees versus over here, it says we can require the number based on being restaurants. Is that right, or? Minimum required, maybe.
So 6 is just saying that that number can be changed as you see fit based on the property.
But it's restricted and may be reduced.
Correct. So you could
Rather than
stipulate
you
more,
set.
and then they could come to you for an exception with the site plan.
Is Sabrina, are you still here or not?
No.
Okay, I guess I had a question for her concerning that particular item there. As far as how, it says right here that an approved waste servicing area is gonna be, this is, who's gonna be picking up? Sabrina, on these food trucks, how do you envision you charging this particular for your services, for your pickup services of waste? Or are you not providing that service?
Shall be removed.
No, that should be when they have to go to their commissary. But right now, how we pick up garbage cans is we have either Parks pick that up. That can be something that is added to, you know, how we do for the downtown Parks area where people do use those cans. You're not gonna really have a big dumpster because they shouldn't be throwing their stuff in a dumpster at this location. That should be, they offload all of that at the commissary. The only thing I'm really,
No, but for the courts, we're gonna require.
then if it's a
Stands on
dumpster, it's
site.
gonna be charged at this dumpster just like you would charge any commercial enterprise.
Okay, so, but you're gonna be just charging one overall side, even though they may have 4 different,
You get charged by dumpster,
okay, so you're gonna be charged by the dumpsters?
yes.
Because right now, the way it is right now, where there's a food truck in an individual lot, they're not paying for anything.
Because they should be taking all their stuff off. They don't have a dumpster.
Okay, but-
When, how I charge by dumpsters, I charge by number of dumpsters and I charge by frequency of pickup. So if you have a 6 times a week pickup, that's a different charge than if you just have a 2 times a week pickup. We base that on how much refuse you actually generate. So a food business generally has to get picked up every day. You can't leave that stuff overnight because then you'll have animals, problems and all of that. So in these locations, that's what you would be having. You'd be having, every day that they're occupied for a Monday through Saturday thing, just like and I do have Sunday pickup as well. So it just depends how many dumpsters you're gonna have, what's the frequency that they're gonna get picked up.
Are we gonna have any kind of cosmetic covering around the dumpsters or required or?
Generally, on our commercial stuff, we do require you to make an enclosure around the dumpster.
Okay.
Um,
Oh,
like
the
we-
city requires it.
Yeah, we
not
just did
the-
that like with Olive
Okay.
Garden, they have their enclosures back there for the dumpsters.
I knew Chick-fil-A did that and, but I thought that was just their decision.
No, we have them put an enclosure in there.
Okay. I think that's good.
Yeah, I think it has to be spelled out a little bit more because.
We
I see a
probably would
problem.
talk about the construction of it too, rather than just a
Well, yeah,
fence or,
And the access, how are you gonna pick it up? And it's gonna be part of that particular site.
right. So this is this alley.
I mean, so there's, something has to be defined there.
Yeah, and like we do with site plans now, when businesses or apartments or whatever comes to us, we evaluate where that dumpster is placed, where's the location that it can be placed, and we inform the customer, we can only come here, we can only come here. They might really want us over there, but if I can't get to it, they have to move to a location that I can get my trucks into.
It seems to me there'd have to be some type of agreement, not where your people are picking up, but that somebody from the food court vendors have an agreement, say if there's receptacles around the seating areas, that they have to, on a regular basis, be emptied into the dumpsters where the city somehow can remove them. What's,
Originally, I was envisioning on that is that each truck itself would have to provide a receptacle outside its business, and then it would thus be its responsibility to take that trash to the dumpster every day and to keep that can that they have out front clean.
and I would agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Each, they're responsible for what they provide. You can't help if you're sitting over at this table and you ate at that truck if you dumped it over in something else. But on average,
Right,
each truck there
yes.
would be responsible for emptying their, because they fill
Yes.
up pretty quickly.
Depending on, if they're lucky and they're really busy, yeah. Yeah, they can get full quick.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you envision needing more than one dumpster for like, say, 4 food trucks? If you did it daily, so.
If, it just depends on how busy they are, sir. They are gonna have to get dumped whether they get completely full anyways, because you're
Right.
not allowed to keep
Right. The
food waste there. But, what we would evaluate is, we would start with probably the one, and, 3 times a week pickup or something like that, or a daily pickup, and then we would, our sanitation foreman keeps a really close eye on that with our commercial drivers, and we work that way then. So if, you know, we originally say, hey, you're gonna have one dumpster and it's gonna be picked up 6 days a week, cause that's what you're operating. If we're finding from our commercial dumpsters that, hey, our drivers are coming and telling us, these are really heavy, they're really full, there's, you know, there's a lot of, then we increase, and we, you know, we tell the customer that, hey, you have to increase how many dumpsters you have to increase whatever frequency you have, and that's what we do with other businesses as well. That would be nothing any different than we already do.
I guess the conundrum, I like that word, I'm having is, you're outside in proximity to this dumpster. I'm all right with that. But I think you need something cosmetic to block it. You're gonna design it for 1 or 2 dumpsters. You
That's the-
can't
yeah,
just
that's
all
the
of a
equation.
sudden expand to 2
Right.
without the cosmetic acceptance, so I don't know how we plan it. I think we should require in the ordinance that it does have an aesthetically pleasing boundary that's required.
Okay.
Renee, did you have something?
I think one of the things we got to separate is food court and food trucks. So normally a food truck would come to a site, they would have all the people who are gonna work there on board. And they'll come do their thing, sell their stuff and leave. What we're talking about here is food court as a concept, as a shopping center. And we should let the people who are going to create this thing to come up with a site plan and come to the planners with it and provide all these amenities that we are looking for. And we should provide guidance on what kind of amenities we're looking for them to provide in such a concept. I think that's, and these are 2 things going in kind of parallel to each other. It's causing a little confusion. Because the council is also looking at a single truck, food truck situation ordinance as well. Correct me, Megan, if I'm incorrect on that. So that's all the clarification. I want.
Well, and I think on our agenda item, the only thing we are considering is the food court.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Vinay.
So yeah, I have added that we'll revisit doing an enclosure requiring that. We'll look at the responsibility of emptying any waste cans, and then also the responsibility of the dumpster that will be on site. So we will add those 3 things. Did I
number
miss
of-
anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The next one that I would have after restrooms is utility services. We believe that they should be required to have power on site. This is to limit the noise of generators, although they can have a generator for emergency use. And then we specified that that's not to exceed 2 hours within a 6-hour period of time. So if something were to happen, especially, you know, let's say during a hurricane, it would be very easy for food trucks to operate and still serve the public if they had those generators. But
That being the case, why would we want to limit them to 2 hours?
Right.
That seems counterproductive there.
it does say unless emergency. Oh, okay, I see.
Permitted to operate.
That is something, so when the mayor issues an emergency declaration, he could exempt them and allow them to operate longer during that emergency hours. This emergency could mean a lot of things here. So if you want, we can look at extending these hours, or you could defer to these hours and then the mayor could allow for an exception if we had something like a hurricane.
As long as there's a vehicle to let them run longer, because like you say, they may be the only game in
They
town
could be.
when power's out.
I can't imagine a 2-hour emergency.
For them, an emergency realistically would be if they lost power on the site because they
Right.
would lose all of their food. So that's what I'm saying. An emergency for them is it's going to trigger different things. So,
I don't think I'd put any timing on
okay,
what an emergency is or the period.
okay.
You just say it's the exception.
On a temporary basis.
Yeah, it's a temporary thing.
Okay. You can look at that.
Because loss to the power to the city, February 2021, you don't want to cap anybody.
Right. Let them serve food. We were hungry then.
Uh-huh.
Well, and plus, if they wanna keep the refrigerators, even if they're not serving food, you don't want them to.
Correct.
And
So you
if they
can't run a
have
generator.
generators, they might be the only game in town.
They might. Hopefully they have enough food to feed everyone. So going to the next page, these are things that would be automatically required, so they don't necessarily need discussion unless you feel like it. They would automatically need a certificate of occupancy for each food truck. They would need a food truck vendor permit. These are things we already currently do. They would need a health permit after their inspection. And where you see safety, they would also have to be inspected by the chief building official and the fire marshal. Those are just standard things that we already do. We talked about number 5 already. If anyone wants to go back to that, we can. Number 6 is just sort of redundant. You all are aware of this. Number 7, this is important. These are exceptions to all of the rules. So food trucks can operate at special events outside of these rules. They can operate at the farmer's market outside of these rules if they have a rented space, and on public property, which those different types are written there.
Okay, I'm confused there.
Yes, sir.
The exceptions,
Yes, sir.
you're talking about the special events, but that's in a different location. It's not at a food court.
Exactly. That's why they would be exempt. So that would not specifically be written into the ordinance, but that is just for you to be aware of, that if there was a special event like Festival of Lights, those food trucks, technically, because there's more than one food truck, they would constitute as a food court. But we are saying because it's a temporary event, they don't have to follow these guidelines,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Then
What-
maybe you need a definition of a food court.
Yeah.
It's any more than one food truck. Any property that has more than one food truck is automatically a food truck court.
See,
as-
I
but
didn't
as
interpret that.
A permanent basis though, right? I mean, at Festival of Lights, you have
Correct, that's why
Half-
it's a
half a
temporary event.
dozen.
That's why
Okay,
it's an
temp-
exception, yes, sir.
temporary, that's what catches that.
Yes, sir.
To
And
me-
it's one food truck in operation. So there's no definitions here because this has not been to our city attorney yet. She will define these, but this, just for you to know, a food truck court will be triggered if there's more than one food truck in operation. So if they have 3 food trucks on site, like we currently have on Plantation, but only one food truck is in operation at any given hour, they would not be a food truck court.
This is not a food truck question, but it may be a permitting question.
Yes, sir.
What for an individual business or a homeowner who hires a food truck in Lake Jackson to come and provide for a party?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think they do in some places. I don't know they've done them in Lake Jackson.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Is that just handled by permitting through how is that done?
Yeah, so
You know.
currently the way that that's done is the food truck does still have to come in and they get inspected. They go through the traditional food
That
truck
should be an
process.
approved food truck to operate
Yes.
in the city of Lake Jackson.
And it would just be basically a temporary food truck permit. It's the same with like an ice cream truck that drives around town. So they just have a license to sell food and operate within the city of Lake Jackson.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I
They
think
had more
it-
than 2, then we'd have to talk, but
I think it gets very much more complicated if a food truck court is not defined as a permanent location and not just the number of food trucks. Because you've got to have the grease receptacles, you have to have you've got to have so many things that we're writing into this thing, but those are strictly for permanent locations. It's not temporary.
correct. I'm sorry, what is the,
My problem is defining what a food truck court is, and I don't think it should be related just on the number of food trucks. I think it's related to a permanent location that meets all these requirements. It's not
Okay.
the festival lights or anything like that.
correct, that's why that's an exception. I think we're on the same page.
No, I don't think we are.
Because you're going backwards.
No,
So
I'm
what I'm
going the other.
saying,
If you have 2 food trucks, you're saying that's
On
a
one
food truck
property.
court. That's a food truck court, and I don't agree with that.
Can I ask why?
Because I think with all these requirements, you can't meet that requirement just when two people drive up next to each other.
If they're on one property, it would trigger it.
Well, we've been to the farmer's market where they've had 2 or 3 food trucks before.
Correct, and they would fall under the exemption.
The
Bullet
exemption.
2, yes, sir.
Under the
And under the Festival of Lights, that would follow under the exemption.
Yes, sir.
exemption.
But at any other time, if it's not on public property, if it's not at a temporary event, if it's not at the farmer's market, any other time there are 2 food trucks on any one property, that would automatically trigger a food truck court.
You included public property?
Yes, sir. Bullet number 3.
Right here.
Number 7, bullet
Under
3.
7, the third bullet down.
Okay, I'm still thinking that all these requirements can only be made at a permanent location rather than a temporary location.
Correct,
And
yes.
so a food truck court needs to be defined as a permanent location designed for that event.
Correct.
If you're
That's
having-
inherent based on the
If you're
guidelines.
having 2 trucks, it's not a food truck. That's a different agreement you have to come up with.
Correct. Yes, what you're saying is inherent based on these guidelines. It'll be written as such. We have a very good city
I
attorney.
don't think I agree with you, but I don't follow what you're, I think you have to have a definition that says a food truck court is a specific location,
Correct.
and it's not based on the number of trucks.
What would it be based on?
The physical.
The usage
facility.
of that property.
Facility, permanent.
Because say somebody's got a lot big enough that they want 2 trucks in there every once in
Correct.
a while. You're saying they can't do that at the food court. It triggers them having to have all this infrastructure.
Correct.
And that's what Harry's saying. That doesn't make sense.
That was determined by city council. So if you want something different, then I would have to take it back to them. But city
Okay.
council triggered
Do you see
one.
the problem, Vinay?
He cannot speak for the entire city council, but you can
I
ask his
understand that,
opinion.
He's our liaison, so
He's
you
our
Correct.
listen.
liaison. But,
And we've known the city attorney a long time.
yeah.
We know she's pretty good.
I just put down there's a consideration for that on definition.
If Dow at the Dream Center decides to have 2 or 3 food court trucks, or the Diamond Center, whatever the hell it's
I
called.
think anything on temporary basis is not covered on the food court concept, so
What?
that's the deciding factor is the permanency and temporary. So if you have, I know we all remember our old industry days, a taco truck, which would come in and, you know,
Sure.
people would flock to it and you could have more than one come up at the site. I think this food court concept is not designed to govern that. I think it's designed to have a permanent facility that would,
Permanent.
that would create a venue for food trucks to come and park there and provide food, music, whatever they want to do. And I think as any other shopping center, the planners should come up with a concept of what they would like to see and then have them come up with a site plan to meet that. And minimum requirements considering the safety and health and all those issues. I think that's what the council is looking for planners.
If you have 2 food trucks and the first of the month thing, can they meet all these requirements in that
Not-
location?
Not if they're temporary, because they will be governed by a separate
So
rule.
again, this is not temporary at all.
I think the issue is, we just gotta get away from calling 2 or more food trucks automatically a food truck court. That's what's, I think, confusing
Exactly.
us. It's almost like
It's the
semantic problem.
installation of a venue of food court.
It's really temporary or permanent, right? If you've got 2 more food trucks at the Friday night concerts downtown, right? That's not a food court,
Exactly.
because tomorrow morning, they're gone, right? They're out of there. So I think that's what Harry's trying to get to.
I would
and
eliminate number
I
7
agree.
totally.
Well,
Jess,
those-
I think
those
the
we're not
council
gonna
is
vote
looking
on.
for your input to come back and tell us what you recommend as.
I
you know.
recommend you eliminate number 7 and you put a definition.
And that's your
I-
prerogative, you have to, put that as a motion
No,
and present that.
I don't know, I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's a kind of between what you two said. If you want to define a food truck court, a physical location,
Right.
as being a location for not less than 2 food trucks, fine. If you want to talk about the operation of where there may be 2 or more food trucks, other than in a food truck court, what governs that, fine. That's not on our agenda tonight.
That's correct.
And so, as you said at the beginning, we're talking about an individual food truck versus a court. Now we're talking about, we need to pull out using identifying 2 as defining a court.
And if it's a fixed court with just 2 trucks, it still would come under the food court.
2 could be in my cul-de-sac for my neighborhood Christmas party.
Yeah, Jeff's example of
Right now it couldn't, but it might could.
somebody getting a taco, Jeff's example of somebody
suggestion.
getting a taco truck for a birthday party, but they
I
also
mean,
get
if I
an
wanna,
ice cream
you know-
truck. They've got 2 trucks.
Sir, that, if you had 2 in your court for an event you had, that would be under the exemption. That would be just a event that you would have to get permission.
Permanent, yeah.
But it wouldn't be permanent.
It'd be temporary.
It would be
No,
a
it would
temporary
be, yeah.
exemption if you were routinely going to have trucks, and it doesn't matter what trucks, just trucks, because you can rotate your trucks in every day, and they do. If you're going to have routinely 2 or more trucks at one location, routinely like every day or 3 days a week or whatever, that triggers your food truck court.
Like his contractor plant people that they showed up every day.
If they showed up every day and they were going to be there, you would get a
Yeah.
food truck court.
Court.
The court is required to have all these things because they are saying, and the business who owns that court is saying, I'm going to have these here no matter what, 2 or more. If I'm only gonna have 1 truck come onto my property every day, it's a food truck. It does not trigger the court, you don't have to have any of the other stuff. If you are always going to have, or you're going to be renting, because what you're doing is you're renting out lots.
Right, it has to be a permanent.
It has to be
Be
permanent
ongoing.
because I'm always going to have that always being relative, going to have these businesses coming to me.
Right.
That's what I think they're trying to get at, is saying on the court, and the reason they use the 2 is because some places can just have 1 truck. We're letting you have 1 truck and not making you have to get anything like this. But
Even
you're
if it
going to
stays
have-
there day after day after day.
even if it sits there day after day after day, you don't, it still considers a food.
Right.
If you're gonna have more than 2, and they're gonna be at this location all the time, whether it's Jimmy Joe Bob's coming in today, and then Little Miss Sally comes in tomorrow, doesn't matter, and you're still gonna have 2 trucks. You need to make that a
So-
permanent location, and
So
it
if
triggers
you
that.
say on Tuesdays at my business, I have Taco Tuesday truck. On Fridays, I have my business during Lent, I have Fabulous Fish Friday, but it's 2 different trucks.
And you
You're
have
saying
just
that's
one truck
food
at a
court?
time?
Just 1 truck at a time?
It's not a food cart.
Okay,
So
that's all I want
how-
to make sure.
Yeah.
How do you regulate that? You don't use these regulations? If a person designs a lot to have food trucks, a food truck covenant, I don't see the 1 is related to that. I say
Well-
1 is, you could do it with
You
just
could do
one.
just one. You can have a lot, you can even make your
allow-
business that you want just 1 food truck.
Not just, allow just 1. You
Yes.
know, you could have 4 as design and there's a change in business, a pandemic or such, and you're down to 1. I wouldn't put them out of business just because they just had 1.
I didn't put them out of business. They
Well-
went out of business because there were no trucks coming to their
If you have
location.
1 truck,
Yeah,
that's still a business.
that's not a court. That's just a food truck that's out of
That's
business.
not a court in your definition. I'm saying the definition is the problem. I think you need some other way to regulate 1, 2, or 3 in temporary locations. But if you have a permanent location design, because we went to a lot of details on how you create grease traps, all these things, and I don't know how you can meet that. With this exceptions, seem like I would just totally remove the exceptions, because we don't have exceptions in other ordinances.
The
for-
exceptions need to be there for things like the Festival of Lights and events
See,
that
the
you
Festival of
have.
Lights doesn't meet this definition to me. I'm sorry, I'm just,
Harry, I think I'm following you. I know what you're talking about. I'll get with them on it a little more. So what you're saying is the definition needs to be cleaned up for food courts. You're trying to address not just more than one truck on a single piece of property, but actually a property that's being developed
that's
to
right,
handle multiple trucks,
that's right.
no matter how many are on it.
And it's not public property.
It's not public property, so technically the Civic Center is not a food court and doesn't need an exemption.
That's right.
Okay. I'll-
That is
I'll-
what I'm trying to bring
I'll
up as
clean
an
it up
issue.
and we'll see what we can do on it.
I'm sorry,
The definition should
it just,
clean that up, once the city attorney gets to it.
okay.
What else was it? The other thing is gonna be the number of trucks, like you were saying, if it goes down to one, there are minimum grease trap requirements. So the grease trap's gonna have to be sized for a certain number of trucks for that site. If that truck, it goes down to just one truck, the grease trap no longer
That
functions
is a
properly.
problem. I
And
appreciate
if
that.
it gets too many, it's the
Yeah.
same thing,
Yeah.
so that's gonna kinda change everything up, so we'll keep an eye on that. Now, on the trash enclosures that you were asking about, there are requirements already for developments, buildings that are in certain areas that have to have them. It's not required for everything, we'll just add in that needs to be required for food trucks, and that'll take care of that.
Thank you, Eddie.
All right?
We want to discuss the zoning any more in depth, or you don't want to talk about that? We have a recommendation or anything on that?
We're supposed to call for a public hearing. The public hearing is not on the ordinance itself as written, it's just on these guidelines, is that correct, or?
Yes, sir, there is no ordinance written.
Okay,
So it's just on these guidelines. We're
Which
just
is-
discussing the guidelines.
Which I think we've been able to give. Thank you.
So we don't need to discuss anymore, we just call for a public hearing? Is that where we're at?
I think so.
Do you have anything else you want to bring up? Or?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want any more guidance from us on the,
We didn't necessarily cover zones, but staff can always make their recommendation to council or
Well,
you.
I think what I would say is obviously the C wasn't, council didn't do it, but I don't know that it would harm to go on as we're writing this
Yeah.
to put that as a possible.
Okay.
Right now, I don't think there's anywhere that sounds like it's gonna be able to do anything.
So you might as well include it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have any objection to it. I don't know what
is
anybody
this
else
gonna go
thinks.
down below, is that what we do with those ordinances, B2, B1, C1? Is that just usages? Is that where that, permitted usage? That's where it appears? Okay. So we would just add that to all three.
Okay. Is there any other feedback that you have or anything you want us to include?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
you want to call for a public
Yes, please. If you're comfortable doing so.
next meeting? When would that be?
May 3rd.
Are us four gonna be here May 4th, May, whatever?
That's what I'm checking.
I think so.
You'd have to ask my doctor. I'm planning on it.
May 3rd?
It appears I'm in town, yes, it would be fine.
Same.
May 3rd.
All right.
Wait a minute, I better check too. Was it? Oh, I mean, that's in May, so I'm okay.
Good. All right. So May 3rd. Public hearing.
Good.
Thank you, Megan. That's a
Yes.
lot of good stuff there.
It's a lot. Sorry, it's a
Yeah.
lot all at once.
Appreciate that.
Next item, discuss setback requirements for residential properties that back up to a park, storm drain, or waterway, and call for a public hearing.
So this was something previously discussed here. It did go back to council. They're sending it back to you with a recommendation that we do allow for that easement adjustment on any properties that back up to a park, storm drain, or a waterway. And that was on the recommendation of staff, but also from council. So they would like to send it back to you and request a public hearing for that. And I'm happy to discuss anything that they discussed or.
And it'll go to the property line, or,
It'll go up to the easement.
Up
So
to
the
the
utility, yes, sir.
okay.
So get them a couple extra feet.
Is that the one that established a minimum? Or just the easement that exists?
I think it said a minimum. I think it was 10 feet.
Because I remember what came off the last discussion here before this board was a certain amount, I think 8, something, 8 foot or something to that effect.
Yeah, we either said 8 or 10 feet at council.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, and
I think we did 10 feet. I think we gave them,
That's from previous ones, and the minutes on the excerpts, it has the exact verbiage.
the council recommendation. Okay, perfect.
what does it say? Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Was it in the packet?
Yes.
Okay.
Very last thing, setback from 15 feet to 8 feet for residential
8 feet.
areas.
Which, like Sal said, I believe is what you talked about as well here, the 8 feet.
Okay.
That's on both side and rear, whichever applies, I guess.
I believe it would just be rear is what we,
It'll
Just
just
the
be the
rear.
rear.
yes, sir.
And remember that right now, all the zones, save and except for the estate zone, has 15 foot primarily as the basic setback, rear building setback. And that's what we require, that they maintain any type of construction. Of course, there are setbacks and then there are easements, and easements vary with whatever the utility company requires for that particular subdivision for their use. In some cases, you're gonna have 10, in some cases, you're gonna have 7, some cases, you're gonna have 16. That's been back and forth. So, depending on how you wanna work this particular ordinance, in this type of situations where you have backing into a park or a waterway or something to that effect, you want to have to set either a minimum or the existing easement, whichever is the maximum, whichever is the greater.
The one the situation that was brought to us, they brought this up for the side, right?
No.
It was a
the
rear.
That was considered the back of the house?
Yeah, it was to the back they wanted to.
They want to go back, in that particular case, it was a 7-foot easement, utility easement, and they wanted to take it to that limit.
It's the orientation of the house is what we're thinking about, the drawing.
So the front was not on the street, it was that way?
The garage came in from the side.
Well, if
So-
there is, if there is a house with a park on its side, why doesn't this need to be in the back? You think you want it in the back or the side, whichever is the area.
Yes, and there are gonna be cases where a property sides a green area, or a waterway for that matter. So, in that case, But in this particular case, what you got before is the rear, and you don't have anything on the side. If that becomes
So
an
the
issue.
side's 5 feet anyway,
Well, where?
right here.
That's an R2, correct. That's an R2 zone.
Right.
And you don't have, you have a minimum 5 foot on one side on an R2.
Right.
And,
And we're talking about 8 feet on the back.
well, I don't know where the 8 foot came about, to be honest with you. Was that because that particular property had an 8 foot utility easement?
I'm trying to go back to the minutes, hold on.
I thought that's what he asked for.
I thought that was, well, it could have been, that's what he asked for. I can't remember exactly what utility easement he had.
What is that trying to say up there? 5 foot minimum and 10 foot, what's it trying to say?
On the side, on an R2, you used to have 15 foot, 50 foot total with a 5 foot minimum on one side. And for a long time, the developers, were using the 7.5 foot rule. And then they started wanting to have some leeway and wanted to get it closer to the property and get it 5 foot on one side minimum with a 10 foot on the other side, making the total 15 foot. So that's basically what it amounts to. And 5 foot basically was set because that was the minimum utility easement that was used at one time and that a lot of properties had. A 5 foot utility easement on one side. So they just decided that they were also gonna be matching that utility easement as the, building setback.
So if you said 5 foot on the affected side, that would fit any situation, wouldn't it?
They can go to 5 foot now.
Right, and there's no existing situations that are less than 5 right now?
No,
So an 8 foot, you could have less than 8 foot, so if we said 5 foot as a minimum for the affected side, whichever side it may be,
the rear including, you're saying?
the rear side, whatever side's abutting the.
Abutting that, okay, yeah, you can set a minimum,
that-
you can
there's
set a
no-
minimum of 5 if that's what it is that you want, or the utilities, whichever's the.
Right, unless something else trumps it,
Yeah. Yeah, you can set that instead of an 8, you can set a 5.
because 8, you're gonna have to start having wording to handle the ones that are already less than 8, so if you say 5, it's clean. What do we need on this? Any suggestions, or just call for a public hearing, or what are we looking for on this?
Well, you'd have a public hearing, there you can discuss this further and talk about minimums that you're gonna be setting for those properties.
You know,
We need to be clear that it's from easement rather than property line.
So I'm looking at the excerpts from the council meeting on March 7th. The motion was made by one council member and voted on was to require setback from 15 feet to 8 feet for residential areas that back up to park, waterway, or storm drain. So that was the motion and
And
voted
no
approved.
reference to an easement.
Correct. So I think what was, as planners we asked to do is to clean that up and get a public hearing for ordinance change. If I'm not correct, Megan? So that's,
So the scope of it is 8 feet, and we ought to call a public hearing, is what I'm hearing.
yes,
And no reference to the side or such.
yes, parkland, and, let's see, it states that, move the required setback from 15 feet to 8 feet for residential areas that back up to a park, waterway, or storm drain.
Why did they choose 8 feet upwards?
You'd have to read all the minutes to really get to that.
Well, I've
I
tried
don't
to.
think they have
and
enough time in
it's-
the day.
It's a little,
But this is their only option, is the 8 feet. And the backup implies the rear?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's what they're saying.
only on those three conditions, so.
3, what's the third one?
Well, it's the waterway, storm drain, or park.
Oh, those 3, yeah, okay.
John?
I don't know, you know, at our last meeting, we seemed to be pretty unified in that, you know, we wanted to send this to the zoning board or whatever to have them look at that.
I'd forgotten that.
Hmm?
I remember you saying that, or us saying that, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you know, and
Well-
I'm,
I think maybe in clarification, council punted it to us
yes, well, yes.
without any guidance
Yeah,
and wanted us to take the bullet.
And now they say
And-
this is the bullet.
And so now they have given us more guidance, which we requested of them.
And the individual that came to you or was here before, he chose not to go to
the
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 ZBA.
zoning board of it.
ZBA. Yes, sir.
Which
Oh, I remember that
understandably,
was their
because
option, yeah.
Modesto indicated
It was unlikely.
that was unlikely
Yes,
that it
sir.
would change anything. So the citizen did what we asked him to do, went back to council, and they've come to us with a recommendation if we would consider it.
I don't know, I mean, we gonna see bigger and bigger sheds being built?
As I
You
recall,
know, I don't know.
and what's here before us had nothing to do with the square footage that the gentleman was asking for at the last meeting.
Right.
This just has to do with the setback. And as I recall, the city, you know, there still has to be so much unused, I guess, the lot has to have so much uncovered area on it.
And that's not changing.
And that doesn't change, and that's not being impacted here. I mean, I'm actually more comfortable looking at this when we weren't asked to talk about the size of the shed. That's what gave us all heartburn.
Yeah.
You see a clean answer? Joe?
So I think the clean answer is, I don't really dislike what you were saying about the 5 foot, just because that was a thing.
Right.
Council came up with 8 foot. I'm trying to read it. It's almost like wedged in under that paragraph 4 where Councilmember Seth was talking about the 15 easement with the 8 foot setback. If you're building a 200 square foot, you can use the 7 of the 15 feet. If you're building a 200 square foot building, you must build outside the 15 feet. I don't know if that's where they plugged it in at, y'all or all the engineers on the,
But that's bringing in the size of the building then. Yeah, it's, I'm just curious, is this 8 foot that they chose, is that gonna allow this fellow to build his 300 and,
with the chair's
50 foot.
permission, I'm going to make a motion. We'll see what happens and we
There
can
you go.
discuss it.
Go for it.
I move that we call for a public hearing to amend the setback requirements for residential properties that back up to a park, storm drain, or waterway to 8 feet as proposed by what we have seen in the minutes of council.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion.
I just have a problem voting for that when I don't understand. I mean, 8 feet, 7 feet, 6 feet,
Because they were elected and we're volunteers.
I guess that's the technical stuff in my head coming out. I
If
mean,
the
it's-
city doesn't like 8 feet, they get run out of business.
I've still got a problem with it backed up to. Why not abut it to? Why does it matter whether it's the back or the side?
What's your
That's
problem
true.
again, a
We-
budget or?
We didn't
They're
really,
saying just the back. What if the?
yeah, we didn't really talk about that last
What's
time.
on the side?
Yeah, we didn't talk about if it came up on the side, which would be
Well, that's
the
saying
5 foot.
5 feet from the side.
yeah, I see that.
Not if you've got something within 5 feet on the other side, then you're,
I guess my point is, maybe the answer is 5 feet, not 8 feet. I don't know why it's 8 feet.
But it's not the answer for us.
all right.
And I seconded it, so.
Are we saying, we have a motion, we have a second, we discussed it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And what did you do?
Second too.
You're for it, okay.
All right.
Oh. making sausage.
Boy, we're combative tonight.
When we eventually did get the agenda that didn't want to get to us, I was like, oh crap. It's gonna be a long night.
All
Okay.
right. C, discuss and consider preliminary and final review and action on plat of Harmony Park subdivision filed on April the 5th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, originally, we thought that this was gonna be a slam dunk, basically because it was a simple pre-plating in this particular case. So that's the reason why we put it in there as as filing for preliminary and final. There was a glitch in the process of submitting this particular plan, this plat. So, we are requesting that you consider this thing as on preliminary, as administrative review for this particular plan.
Okay. Is there anybody here to speak to it, or you it?
I think I recognize
This
some
person
people.
right here, and,
I'm Mark Burdick, came down from 941 Pintail Lane in Prosper today to meet with you gents and
Long
ladies.
trip.
Yeah.
Hope it's worth it.
It took about as long as that food court truck discussion to get here.
You
Just as long as you don't
sped.
put food trucks, don't put food trucks on this.
You were in a hurry?
I'm the engineer for the project, and typically, well, I'll say sometimes, as the engineer, I'll get involved in the preliminary plating when there are questions about drainage easements or utility
Right.
easements that an engineer can help with. And so that's the reason we put this together, for the city to review on a preliminary basis. The confusion lied in one of the ordinances where, it says that an engineer could provide the final plat, from at least the way it was written. That's how I interpreted it. Sal may have as well. I believe everybody interpreted it that way, but we weren't by any means trying to cross over any boundaries. We thought we were following the city ordinances. So when they say it's an administrative approval, that's what I typically see with any preliminary plat that I'm involved in, is typically just a review with the engineers to do that preliminary review, and then it's sent on for final approval through either construction, substantial completion, or city council, depending on the jurisdiction we're in. So I did want to clarify that. We issued this document based on discussion with Sal, discussion with Eddie, and discussion with Steltion. Now backing up from that, we had a discussion at the site with Stuart Herbst today, and he had mentioned that VDD, which is a block that needs to go on here, is actively pumping in the area to keep the water levels lower, especially on one particular side of the city. So, as far as the required restricted reserve for detention and things that were imposed on this particular property, as opposed to some in the other, general vicinity where there's absolutely no detention, the developer is now considering requesting a variance on the lot sizes for this particular plat in order to utilize them for sale. So that's something to be considered for the final plat. And the hardship would be that a portion of the property was utilized for detention, whereas in other parts of the city, no detention has been required. And so square footage was taken up in order to accommodate what appears to be handled through a pretty large investment in reducing the base flood elevation. I believe in 2023, at least my understanding is that the flood elevation in this location would be reduced by 1 foot. That's what I've been told. What's that? It would be less than 1 foot.
so let me understand this thing, Mark. You are requesting that the plating be changed and the size of the lots that you are proposing be changed?
Well, so the ordinance exists for this property to be zone T1, which has a minimum lot size of 2,000 square feet.
Correct.
And these lots average 1,800 square feet, roughly. 1,700 to 1,800 square feet, depending on what they back up to. It could be an easement, it could be the property line. But with it a T1 zone and that minimum square foot lot of 2,000, some of these meet it already. So the ones that don't, it would be a variance, I believe. Or-
Okay, because what you're saying is that originally you presented this to the board as a rental
Correct,
townhouse.
correct.
And you are changing it now to or your intention now is to sell.
To sell 25
And therefore,
townhomes.
you need to actually subdivide the property or replat the property with actual lots and blocks.
Correct. That's what we're inquiring to today because we recognize it's a T1 zone. We recognize that we've gone through, gotten the site plan approved.
And you, in order to do that, because of the loss of, just lot size due to this detention that was imposed on you,
Correct. I think we put a reserve in there.
you put a
doesn't-
reserve,
It just doesn't work. Oh, yeah, there it is. There's a
Yes.
reserve that established via a plat so that it's restricted, and a detention pond must go there in order for these
okay?
properties to exist, but,
Okay. So basically what it amounts to is you are now selling the property, so the lots that you originally intended for your townhouses do not meet the townhouse minimum.
they do not.
And that's what you're requesting, that you have you call it a variance to the lot size.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
It would be
Now,
beneath
now,
the,
let me understand that, okay.
yes,
The only way that, the only way that you would be able to get the variance, so-called variance to the lot size would have to go through a rezoning, PURZ rezoning. T1 with a variance, which would then set you back
set you back.
quite a bit. Because it's-
Time-wise.
Yeah, time-wise and, public hearing-wise, because he has to go public hearing to them, to the council, and through all that process, you know, is gonna take quite a bit, since you already know how long it took before.
Correct.
So, it can be done, you know, and still be subject to the public hearing, results.
So some of these lots, like I mentioned before, they do meet the 2,000 square foot,
But some of them don't, right?
and some of them don't.
Okay.
So,
So basically what it amounts to, you would be requesting a planned unit residential zone, T1, with, variances to the lot size.
now if it's already zoned to T1 and the 5 at the front do meet the zone requirement, could they not be subdivided under the existing T1 and the others left to be rental?
Well, I mean, yeah, but now you're putting a lot of ways.
But that's the map would be created from
You
the
would
plat.
then,
So-
you would then have to replat that portion
Correct.
into two different subdivisions.
What is it, R4 or
And right now, it's a T1.
To T1.
T1? But to meet the other, is it
To meet the other one will be a T1 and the other one will be an R4.
R4, okay?
So, this thing is taken, it's, become its own beast, the way you're trying to change that on the.
Help my
fly.
memory, your project over on Plantation, that's where you were planning to sell them, weren't you?
No, he was planning on selling the ones behind Bucky's at 2004.
Where?
Correct.
Behind Bucky's at 2004?
Right, on Plantation. Oh, that, yeah, okay, that, I remember this discussion, but I didn't remember any discussion about selling
Yeah.
these. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's
No,
good.
this is the first time, I'll clarify for you for sure.
For this one,
Th-
okay.
For this property is the first time we discussed it, so,
And to be sure, like, we don't plan to sell them. Derek Lacasse, I'm the developer. Yeah, so we're not gonna go this route. We just wanted that flexibility to be able to sell them, rather than if we did decide to size up to a bigger property at some point, we didn't have to sell this as a commercial at a cap rate. We could sell it, because obviously it's a lot easier to sell individual houses in this area than it is to sell one property for millions, right? So really it was just for flexibility. So if we gotta go through all of that, then it's
well,
not necessary.
Then what I recommend is that you proceed with just replanting the way it is right now, or the way, everything is going on with these odd lot sizes.
Mhm.
And then, you know, once you get your project going in there, then go through the process of going through the
We ever get to the
rezoning.
point where we wanna
Yeah.
do that, okay.
Yeah,
Understood.
that's the way I would say,
Yeah, we're just gonna proceed as is.
okay, yeah, that's what I would recommend you do that. Otherwise, you're gonna be
Right, yeah, I'm ready to start.
Really
creating more
complicated.
problems.
Thank you.
So you're saying we could go ahead and start construction and then give people who move into these homes eventually an opportunity to buy
Eventually,
them?
an opportunity to buy the
Okay,
property,
great.
but
That would be
you're gonna-
great. Yeah.
You're gonna have to start discussing that with the planners about that intention there, so that, to see whether or not they would be willing to rezone that into this particular morph of a T1. So, I mean, it's, because you may wanna say, when the time comes and they wanna rezone to a PUD T1 in order to have these smaller lots, then you're gonna have to, you know, decide, you know, is that a,
Can they build it with these dimensions now?
yeah, they can build it as a townhouse for rental purposes, yes. It doesn't
For
have to
rental?
be- It doesn't have to be lotted. In other words, they don't have to put any lot size there.
Okay.
But they have put the lot sizes there already.
So T1 specify, does T1 have this 2,000 square foot requirement?
20 by 100,
Yes, it does.
20 by 100.
Okay. And I still don't understand, how is this zone that you can go smaller? You're not selling, I understand that, but,
You're not selling, you're right.
There are no lots right now.
There are
It's
no
all
lots.
owned
well, I
by one
understand they're not
property.
lots. My nomenclature is probably not correct, but,
There's a minimum, there's not a maximum what a townhouse does. You know, so that is a townhouse lot.
this
Right.
overall
The
thing,
2 acre tract or 4. 2.5
Okay.
acre tract. So they're building townhouses there.
So what do you need from us?
Okay, but we can go, if they wish to go through to finish off the process, to start their building, which is, I believe, what they wanna do, you know, they can't sell the properties right now the way, I mean, they cannot sell those properties the way they are right now.
it can be rented.
They're gonna be rented. If in the course of this thing, they decide to start selling, that they need to sell, then they would have to come back to you, get a rezone to replat those smaller lots, to have those smaller lots approved by you as a townhouse lot. But it would have to come on a rezone, and it would have to be on a PUD rezone, PURC rezone,
Right.
Plan Unit Residential Zone, T1.
But right now, I'll take that's off the table and we don't have to make a decision on anything
Well,
now.
that's off the table because it's a matter of time. Do they want to stop the process and go
Right.
through the other one? Which may be the
They know
best thing,
their
I
options,
mean.
they know their options, so, yeah.
Maybe the best thing that you can recommend or,
We don't, compared to what you,
John?
Well, you said you weren't gonna go down that road.
I'm fine leaving the rentals. I just
Yeah.
wanted that flexibility, yeah, I don't.
right, looking for flexibility.
Jeff?
I'm fine with it as, you know, doing as a plan, and then we'll figure out in the future. But that's not what we have to focus on now.
so we will proceed with just a replat of this thing. This would be a administrative review of approval. And, next time, it will be the final, we will file for final at that time.
Okay, so just for my own clarification, that when discussing with the surveyor, we need to have the VDD signature block as part of the final approval.
Typically, yes, they will
And-
require that.
And are there any other requirements that need to be changed on this particular
No,
document?
everything I've been compliant with except for that, you know.
The block.
Yeah, that.
The VDD
yeah,
block.
correct.
Yes, sir. Okay. So we're going to get in touch with the VDD, discuss the detention reserve, seek their acceptance, and then come back. And that may not be May, because their next meeting is April 17th, I believe. So it may be June if they have any questions. So, thank you. I don't think I have any other questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Is there anything to motion? I don't think there's a motion, so.
What is the, you want it to be what review?
There will be a administrative review.
Okay. I move to approve for consider for preliminary administrative review and action on plat of Harmony Park subdivision filed on April 5th, 2022.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
D, discuss and consider preliminary and final review and action on amendment to site and landscape plans of the 101 Winding Way Shopping Center development at the Lake Jackson Town Center filed on April the 5th, 2022.
I am very disappointed that Mr. Bajun is not here. 101 Winding Way finally came back and realized that they did not need that second dumpster enclosure that he was opposed to on the second site amendment, because he thought it would block the view. And they are removing it. They're going back to the single dumpster enclosure for, behind Phase 1 building and eliminating the Phase 2 building dumpster enclosure. And so with the site amendment, that's what they're doing. They're removing that. They've adjusted their calculations, very minimal. And then with the landscape amendment, they're just considering the same thing and adjusting those calculations. So it's very straightforward. There's no major changes. Everything stayed the same. That dumpster enclosure went away.
They're removing it because they don't think.
Because they heard Matt didn't like it, that's. No, they realized they didn't need it.
Didn't
They've
need
got
it,
enough
yeah.
room for two dumpsters in the other, there's no reason to have two.
Is there any discussion on this, or are we good with this?
Good.
Good.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the preliminary and final review and action on amendment to site and landscape plan of the 101 Winding Way Shopping Center development at Lake Jackson Town Center, filed on April 5th, 2022.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. E, discuss, consider preliminary and final review and action on amendment to site and landscape plan of the HEB Town Center for modifications to the curbside facilities remodeling and expansion project filed on April 5th, 2022.
This is another one that's very straightforward. HEB has done some small modifications to the building since they've been open. And when they did this curbside modification in the rear, we told them this was a large enough modification to justify coming back in and reevaluating the landscape and site plan and just bringing them up to date. They lost a lot of trees, and a lot of these bare islands here show that those trees are gone. They tried.
They
They
did.
didn't make it. And that's all this is. It's just to clean it up, to get everything up to date so that we can look at a single plan and know what's out there.
John, anything?
I don't think so.
I don't have any-
No.
I don't have anything.
Is this changing the parking layout? Is that what I'm reading, or?
It's changing this parking layout here where the
Only there,
curbside,
okay.
they added
Alright.
these
They added that.
things. It used to be just this little area, and as a matter of fact, this was just a little stub
It's
out.
just there, okay.
Yeah.
So
As
that's
far as
the,
rest,
that's
they
the
have-
pickup area there that,
Correct,
Yeah.
that's just for curbside, those aren't true parking stalls, those
Right.
are,
And that's
Waiting
already
stalls.
been built, so,
that's already been built, yes,
so
sir.
this is as
This was a
built.
stipulation that when we approved this design and everything, they had to come back to you guys and just get everything updated so that we all knew what was in the field.
okay.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve for preliminary and final review and action on amendment to site and landscape plans of the HEB Town Center for modifications to the curbside facilities, remodeling and expansion project filed on April 5th, 2022.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. We got documents to signature?
Yes, sir, we've got some in the conference room.
On the conference,
Okay.
and here.
Items of community interest. John?
I don't know if I really have anything. I did get some, I don't know if you guys have heard, I got some good news on Joe. He got the pathology report back yesterday, and it's about as best as could be expected. They removed the cancer, and it was localized, and he's not having to have any other treatment
Cool.
right now.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Great.
I talked to Becky too, in church on Sunday, and she was really happy with how things were progressing, so that's great news.
Good. Thanks for the update. Jeff?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Gary? Was talking to a lady that cuts my hair. She's at the intersection there by Table 21 there, kinda, whatever road that is. And said that she's been told the handicaps are gonna be put at both ends. No?
There are handicaps that were designed into this project, and they meet all the conditions that,
She and the lady next to her have old parts.
a lot of people have moved in recently after the design, and of course, they all want to have one. And, we try to accommodate as best we can, but every time something changes, somebody closes shop and somebody opens up, it brings out this whole thing back again. So it becomes very hard for us to provide everything to everyone, to everybody. So I know who you're talking about, and, we've discussed this in back and forth. Megan's already gone.
She's in her office.
Could you call Megan? Yeah. Megan is our liaison with the public, and we, constantly. As a matter of fact, we just put one in temporarily, just during the construction, because there wasn't one at the, at the Champagne? Okay, and the lady comes here, takes her mother, to the beauty shop, and was asking for, she was having problems, so we said, okay, we'll try to do right now one temporarily while this construction's going, and then, you're gonna have to live with what's called for, what's been designed. So, it's very hard to please
This can't be a
everyone.
new problem. I mean, the flexibility of parking downtown and shared parking, it's
That's
part
a-
of the inherent
It is,
design.
yeah,
and-
it is a problem, yes. Okay, liaison with the traffic,
Hello. What was the question? I'm so sorry. I was watching on live, but I must have missed.
Oh,
Besides
I
parking,
thought
that's
you were
all I
watching
heard.
television.
Yes. What was the
Okay.
question? Yes, Sal?
If I refer to across from McManus's gas station, will she know where I'm talking about?
That's
No, she
mean.
won't.
Bodega? Okay. Oh, in the intersection?
Yeah, they're,
Okay,
towards Lake Theater from, Table 21 or whatever it is.
okay.
Barber shop.
Yes. Relatively new.
And there's a shop next to her. Apparently they have several customers that need close parking. So they were just wondering if there could be a handicap spot in their vicinity.
We've already talked with them. They actually reached out to Councilwoman Seth, and they came to our last open meeting that we had for the downtown businesses. And so I've spoken with I believe she's a manager there. I don't think it's a property owner, but we put them in contact with Kimley Horn, who is our engineering firm. They're looking at that. The one thing is, because the parking spot where they want it is within the intersection, Kimley Horn is concerned about the hazardous risk of putting a handicap spot where they want it within the intersection. But we are going to look at it. What I'm currently doing, and we told the manager this of the barber shop right there, I'm going to be calling the other businesses, because the last time, so that barbershop was not there when we did the last poll of all the businesses about where the handicap parking spot should go. And so those were placed based on what the previous businesses said, not property owners, but businesses. And so what I'm going to do is call the businesses that are currently there and the property owners and see if any of them are opposed. Because what happens when you move, as you're aware, the handicap spot there, you technically lose 2 spaces in a sense, because you have to have the one adjacent to it for the handicap spot as well. So they all have to be comfortable with one turning into a handicap spot and then the other being used also for that handicap spot. So my current plan, and Kimley Horn, we discussed it. They said they'll make the decision later on, because it's not something we have to make now. Moving a handicap spot isn't difficult for them. So once I have that confirmation from them, then we'll be back in contact with the property owners right there and the business owners. So it's not a no for right now. We told them we'd look into it. It's just I haven't heard back from all of the businesses right there. I know the two directly next to the barber shop are okay with it, with the handicap spot being right there. So I just have 2 more to hear from. But we're looking into it, sir, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that all? Okay.
Do we know when Gary's service is yet?
We have not heard, unless you guys have heard anything. We have not heard. I know from just the source that he was gonna be cremated, but I don't know whether or not, what service he was gonna be having or where it was gonna be held. I don't really know.
All right. Sal, you got anything for us?
No, Eddie may have a update on the on the construction projects going on that you may wanna. Yeah, why don't you do that?
All right. Joe's not here either, but they did finally start going vertical on
You're
the
making us
villas
so
behind.
inferior. Are we?
I know,
those are
man.
fake?
It's just everything happens and you guys don't even bother to show up today, right? Yeah, Joe's, what do you call it, a pipe garden behind him. They finally started putting up walls, so they've got the first building growing there. So I'm sure that makes them happy. Downtown is a mess. We're tearing up everything, and anything that's not bolted to the ground is getting moved around right now, so, we're working on it. They're doing drainage. They have started detouring traffic on that way while they put in the large drainage boxes. The first phase will be that way from the old Smith Hart's building around the local and all the way to North Parking Place, so in front of the bodega. That section will be the first section that gets removed and replaced. A water line is in. I have to go witness a water test tomorrow, the pressure test, and then back T test will come later on in the week. So hopefully that'll move forward. North Parking Place already has water, new water, and they are almost complete with the sewer. They've got a little bit of work to do on the sewer line, not much. And then they'll be doing the final water tie-ins on North Parking Place and that way, and the small section of Circle. Most of the Circle-Way meters are in the rear, not in the front. There's only 5 that front Circle-Way, so they'll get those. And then it'll be time to start on the pavement, and that's when the mess starts, because that's when all the detours start shifting everybody around back and forth, and we start getting into rain delays. They make big delays, not little delays. The old Arlen's building, they have started remodeling inside. They've started doing some utility works outside. Lakewood, the residents at Lakewood, they have started doing the underground. They're starting with the public side, so they're doing all the water and sewer out towards the street and laying in the bones for the packs of houses how they call them. And they are moving along pretty quickly. I know you've seen a lot of trees come down. It's what we expected. It looks a little bare in there, but it's gonna get filled up with landscaping and more buildings.
I'm impressed with how many trucks, those big trucks have
Yes,
been running
sir.
the last 3 weeks, steady.
Steady.
That's amazing.
All
the amount
day,
of
every day.
material they're hauling out
Yep.
there.
Each one takes a load in and takes a load out. They're belly dump 18-wheelers. They're big trucks. And, the same thing with the trees, the brush, they're running huge box trucks to get the brush out. It's a lot of work. I mean, on paper, it's only this big, but when you go out there, they're moving. So there haven't been a lot of issues with them there. They're working fine. They're following the rules. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Christian Brothers is wrapping up. They need landscaping, but they're in the same boat as everyone else. Subcontractors are hard to come by right now. You gotta wait in line. So they're trying to get all their irrigation and everything else in, and then trying to get moved into the building. It's a franchise, so he's losing money if he's not making money. So they're trying to get a temporary CO so they can get open before the landscaping goes in. But the landscaping should be going in at the end of the month, so he's trying to make sure that he gets open as soon as possible. So he may have his grand opening before he has his final landscaping. One thing that you guys didn't see the site plan on it because it's less than 2 acres. The trees up front. There was a live oak tree that was supposed to be up front. There is also a 20-foot water and sewer utility easement that's up front. Their tree came too close to the pipes. They were able to save a very nice, healthy West Texas oak, but still an oak, 12-inch diameter tree, and they asked if they could take credit for that rather than put a live oak on top of the fire hydrant or the water meters, which wasn't gonna last anyways because we tear those things out all the time. So we allowed them to take credit for a big, healthy oak in the rear there by their detention pond. It's not quite as visible. They'll still have the crepe myrtles along the side that they promised, and a few other a couple other live oaks around the building, but it will look a little bare in the front because that one live oak that they squeezed in, it just wasn't gonna make it in the little spot that they ended up with. These guys had their kickoff meeting over on the townhomes that they had just talked about, the Harmony Park. I'd seen them all before I came to the meeting. They're speaking with Terracon and getting all their construction sequencing set up to start that moving. What else do we have going? I'm sure there's, Colito's getting close to being done. They have to come back to get the final replat. That's part of the, did they? Oh, they did, yeah, at the last meeting, that's right. Yeah, they did get that. So they're done, they're ready for a CO whenever they get completed with the construction. And, man, I think that's it.
And your monument?
Oh, the monument. It's prettier now. They actually got some tile up today, so, yeah, it looks a lot different.
Looking better.
It looks like something. And, it's finally moving forward. We finally got a good craftsman over there the guy is doing all the stone and the tile and the bench tops. He did all of that, and he pays attention to what he's doing, so it's not as slow as the concrete work was. And the paver guys did good too, but, the concrete work is really what slowed everything down. We got contractors that are used to building roads and, things like that, driveways, parking lots, not vertical. And it's a big difference. So that's got slow. Of course, it's the same thing as everything else. Our north parking place, a canopy removal has slowed down. It's been delayed because of material shortages and subcontractors. They were supposed to start that work in January, and we're here in April, and the contractor's trying to get the subs to come in and finish. The sub is saying I had to move on, so you're just in the back of the line again. And so they're working on it slowly, but it's moving along. This project was the same. The subs were supposed to have been out of here 6 months ago. Materials weren't there. It's the same issue everywhere. It's just hard to get anything built right now. But it is moving forward and it is looking better. Hopefully by the end of the month, this monument will be done and we can clean all that mess up and have a nice looking city logo on the corner there.
Any idea how much longer they're gonna be hauling that material out of Wasatch? What I'm getting at is they run through the school zones.
They run through the school zone, and no matter which way they go, they kind of end up with that problem.
If they went north to Oyster Creek Drive and out that way, they could.
Yes, if they go out to
Or
down
south,
Wasatch
go south,
and make a right out, they can. And coming in is the problem for them on that side.
There's not a good way.
There's not a good way. I don't like running through school zones, but we haven't really had any complaints, and they typically learn being in a school zone around 3 o'clock is not a good idea, because you're gonna get stuck. Even with the modifications in the stacking lane, it's still difficult to get across that way in front of that school during, pickup hours. The people want to make a left turn. They just have to make that left turn. They can't approach from the other side. And so people will turn off the green light and stop right there and just wait, until somebody lets them in. And it's very dangerous. It's just one of those things that people just can't get through
What
their head.
really we need to be concerned about is when they start building 130 homes and all the concrete that's gonna be taking place, all the hauling is gonna be taking place along those streets. I'm afraid that
Is there any restrictions on the loading? I mean, I was thinking about those dump trucks on your nice new pavement.
yeah, I know that, I realize that, yeah, correct.
It's not on the agenda item. So we can't discuss.
No, we're just viewing concerns. Yeah, that's something that we're gonna have to in the future talk about, because it's gonna take a tremendous amount of hauling of material through there.
Anything else, Eddie?
That's it.
Not that I can think of. Megan's dog pound is moving forward. It's not ready for you guys to look at it. It's actually a smaller site, so it won't be here, but it is moving forward. The architects are getting everything. We've got a conceptual plan. They're trying. What they're doing is passing through the cost of all the engineering to us to not jack up the price of the project, to try to keep it, under budget. They're really good people to work with. They're used to working with municipalities with set project budgets. And so they are doing everything they can to try to keep our prices down and working around our budgets, which is, I hate to say it, but it's rare for an architect to actually consider budget before pretty and actually come to you and say, hey, we can do this a little prettier, but there is a cheaper way, and here it is. And they do that, and they're doing a good job of it. So it is moving forward. We haven't got the engineers on board. Once the engineers get on board, the rest of it should fly through, because the concept, the building, the layout, all of that has already moved forward. All righty?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
What else, anything from you? Megan, anything?
Yes, sir.
Renee? Stand-in city manager? Nothing? Sabrina, you're hiding back there in the corner?
No, I don't have anything for you.
All right. And we're adjourned. Let's sign things. We got our next meeting May 3rd.
Oh, I made friends tonight.